when you have a system that you've been using for audio and you are curious whether how to proceed by upgrading the cabling. Power cords, interconnect, or speaker cable. Which one to upgrade first? Actually, the best way that I would recommend would be to start with power cords. Because power cords are the ultimate limiters of the capability of your equipment. And when you remove that choke point, then you will see much more what your equipment is capable to do, and then they will react to interconnect and speaker cable changes much better. If you decide to just use a basic power cord that most equipment come with, that really junk computer grade power cord, in that case then you invest into expensive speaker cable and interconnect, then later on, when you start upgrading your power cord, you will realize that those interconnect and speaker cable choices might not have been the best. And then you will ditch the power cord and you will keep on using going back to the basic power cord, and you will reach maybe like 20% of what your system can do. And this happens because the power cord tells you how much energy your system can take. And if you have a basic power cord, then the energy uptake will be severely limited. And in that case, those interconnects and those speaker cable will help you that artificially boost the dynamic range, boost the frequency response, and will give us a coloration that that compensates the lack of a good power cord. So when finally you decide to invest in a good power cord, then it will see you that what those interconnect and speaker cable are doing, basically skewing the dynamics response of your units. And then most people blame the power cords. That you see now I changed the power cords and now it sounds like the whole system is falling apart. Like the sound became like so much bass heavy. There's so much high frequencies suddenly. The dynamic range doesn't make any sense. It's just shouty and just unbearable sound. If you get into that situation, then it means that your interconnect and your speaker cable don't really match your system, and usually the source of your problems is not the power cord, it's the other two. So that's why if you want to go into the route to upgrade your cabling, start with power cords. And then with power cords, you can hear much more of the potential of your equipment. Because power cords, they unlock what your amp can do, what your preamp can do, what your DAC can do. For example, there are some DACs like PS audio DACs, they are extremely sensitive to power cords. And the difference, for example, I have an old PS audio DAC, the DL3. If you use a generic power cord, then by today's standards, it doesn't even register on any scale. It cannot compete with anything. And if you use the best power cord, in naturalness, musicality, bass, dynamics, it just floors 99% of any DACs on the market today. So that's how much power cord makes a difference. and usually decks are really sensitive to it, and power amplifiers. Those are your two key choke points where you should start with the power cord. And then I would recommend to go for an interconnect cable, and after that go for a speaker cable, because the speaker cable is the most expensive of all of them. So before we continue any further, because I'm going to show you a lot of advice that involves working with electricity, with voltages, and now I just show you to sign this waiver that this is a disclaimer for all my channel contents, which includes today I am not responsible if you do something stupid and injure yourself or kill someone. So just take it to heart and be aware that every suggestion I give you on working with live gear is for trained professionals only. So if you are not trained to work on the AC outlet, then ask an electrician to do it and execute those ideas that I give here. If you don't know how to modify an amplifier, especially like a tube amplifier, if you happen to have an ongaku in your home, then do not just go ahead and open it up and change the input wires in it, because you will most likely just electrocute yourself with a kilovolt of voltage. So these things require highly skilled professionals, and if you want to learn these skills on how to work on amplifiers, then it is mandatory that you are being trained by someone. You have a mentor and you study with the mentor for a long time, and you work under the supervision of this mentor. And if for example, for young people today, especially in school, they think that I watch 10 YouTube videos and I become an expert and now I can work in an amplifier or open up something. No, you must not. Maybe you get lucky and you can open up your iPhone and your tablet. You can fix those if you are a kid and a really smart kid. My godson does that. He's 10 years old and he's fixing computers. It's insane. But if you're a kid, working on audio equipment is an absolute no. Because if you do some mistake, you will kill yourself. This is not a joke. So as I say here, number 6, absolutely no minors. So if you are a minor and you are watching my videos, then no. Before you turn 18 or 21, whatever your legal age in your country, never ever attempt to work on audio gear, especially tube gear. If you are curious, then seek out someone in your neighborhood who is an audio professional and watch them and learn from them. But do not repeat it at home. Just watch first, get trained, get certified, and then you are ready to go. So always take safety first. If you are not competent, do not attempt. There's a risk of injury and death for you, family members, and animals. So don't just think about yourself when you do something. Think that if you change something in your home's electrical wiring, and there's someone coming house sitting or friends coming over, they try to plug in an appliance and they electrocute themselves. So that's why you have to know the code. You have to be a trained electrician to work on your electrical system. This is no joke, absolutely. And the most important part, everything that you do working on audio gear is your responsibility. I am not legally responsible for your actions and their consequences. Here you go. This is my advice. safety first, professionals only. And my advice on working on audio gear is for audio professionals who work on these gears. Okay, now all that out of the way, let's go for a more in-depth view. So we went through the list that power cord first, interconnect second step, speaker cable third step. And I have not explained yet why interconnect second and speaker cable third. And the reason for that is that when you look for an interconnect cable, look for the material that it's made of and the company who makes it, and try it out first. And I'm saying that because an interconnect cable is much cheaper than a speaker cable. And when you try out an interconnect cable from a certain manufacturer, it will have a certain difference in sound. And their speaker cables will also make a difference in the same direction. And that's why I start with interconnect cable, because if you like it, then buy the expensive speaker cable. But if you don't like it, then instead of buying the expensive speaker cable from the same company, try out another interconnect cable from a different company, and if you like that, then get their speaker cable. Okay, so that out of the way, let's look at the smart way to upgrade your power cord, because believe it or not, to get a really good power cord like a Kimber PK10, that will be more expensive than many of our components in the system, or maybe it's more, that single power cable will be more expensive than your entire chain. And probably no one wants to start with that sort of investment. And also, if you dump that kind of power cable in a beginner level system, that it's like throwing Hercules into a kindergarten. So no idea what will happen. Okay, so we can take a smart route on how to upgrade the power intake capacity of your equipment. So first of all, upgrade your plugs, your AC outlets in the wall. I'm sorry, I'm jumped a few lines below. So under upgrade the plugs, I mean the IAC plugs. So which is you have your standard power cord. Maybe you bought a power cord for $200, but for that price, the copper conductor of the cable is vastly better than a plain computer grade connector. But the plugs, and in the end, are very cheap, very basic, and just not good. So the best way to work around that is get a decent power cord and change the ends. And change them for watt gate ends. So I really can recommend watt gate. I would say like any of their models. They are not cheap, but they do make a really big difference. And when you go for watt gate, make sure to get it from an authorized dealer, because if you go on eBay, maybe on Amazon too, I'm not sure, I haven't checked it there. If you see like watt gate plugs for very cheap, like a third of the price or fourth of the price, then that's not a watt gate plug. It's a copy, and it means that in the outside it looks like a watt gate, but the metal parts inside are made of junk metal. So it will look as if you had watt gate, but it will not sound like a watt gate. You are buying snake oil in that case. And that feeds much to the legend of the snake oil, when people buy these fake copies and they figure out it doesn't work. And of course it's snake oil. So they brand the entire IEC plug market as snake oil. but they don't realize that they've been trying out this you know, the fake ones. So after you upgrade your plugs on your power cords, that's a really sensible, really good idea. You can also upgrade, and actually this will be even cheaper, the wall sockets. So where did I place? Here. So if you live in the United States, then I can recommend these Leviton plugs. I just open it. This is how it looks like. So you see in the US we have this type of plugs, and this is the neutral, that's the hot, and this is the ground. And when you see that here the neutral, it has this extra leg sticking out to the side, it means that that outlet is rated for 20 amps instead of 15 amps. And now here comes a disclaimer that you are not supposed to put a 20 amp outlet on a power line that can only carry 15 amps. So make sure that the line that runs in the wall is at least 12 gauge, because if it's 14 gauge, then you are supposed to put only a 15 amp outlet on it. If actually I myself have done it, that I have put in the 20 amp outlet on it, I just made a mental note that I should not put in any equipment here that draws 20 amp current. And if you have your circuit breaker and the breaker is rated for 15 amps, it will shut down at 15 amps, so that will not create a fire hazard. But if you just change the outlet from 15 to 20, it doesn't mean that it will be able to handle equipment which require 20 amps. That's not the case. But so why am I recommending this change? If you can do it and your electrician allows this change, I'm recommending it because the contact here, the contact for these 20 amp outlets is much better quality than the contact in the 15 amp terminals. So you will get much better current transmission between your outlet and your power cord with these type of outlets. And why am I holding this outlet specifically? I'm holding it because, let me see just the name, what this is called. So this is called Leviton 5362W. Where is it? There. And I'm showing this because 10 years ago, it was about 10 years ago, that my mentor did an outlet test. So what we did is that we had over a dozen different AC outlets, including every high-end outlet in the market, a plain vanilla outlet, a couple of these Leviton outlets, which are like upper grade from the basic, and we tested all of them. What kind of impact do they have on the sound? And I'm showing this because this sounded the best. So if you do not have money to pay for a silver contact watt gate, because you can get silver plated AC outlet as well, but it's really expensive. This is super cheap, and it makes a tremendous difference. So if you are upgrading your power cord, make sure to ask around an electrician, and just go to Home Depot, buy this, look for those numbers that I have shown you, and buy a couple of these outlets and plug your system through this. Another important part is use a new circuit breaker. So if you live in an old home and maybe your circuit breakers that feed your stereo system's line, it might be 20-30 year old, so it's really corroded, oxidized material inside. Have an electrician come out and change it for you. And even that will make a noticeable difference as well. And also, if you are living in an older home, so it was built like over 5 years ago, but if it's very old, if it's between 5 and 15 years ago, then also call out an electrician and ask him to tighten up your electrical connection in your fuse box. Because over time, because they conduct so much current, and that creates a 60 hertz or 50 hertz resonance if you are in Europe. And that resonance, although it's really tiny, but over the decades, it will loosen up the connection. And if the connection at the fuse box is loosened up, the current handling capability is drastically reduced. So if you are wondering why your system doesn't have the same dynamics as those components had in the store, then this might be a key component to it. So make sure to check your fuses. And also, if you live in an older home, like 20 years or more, then there's a very good chance that your fuse box is really old, really outdated, very corroded, and possibly overloaded. So when I moved into my new home, it had an ancient fuse box from the 70s, and it was totally not up to code. Each break, some of the breakers had like 2 lines running into them, which is a huge no-no, and it was just massively overloaded because it was from the 70s, and at that time people didn't use much electricity. It was just rated for 60 amps, which is not much. So it's an absolute must if you are buying an older house to upgrade your fuse box. And it's not just for your stereo quality, but also for the safety of your home. There is an incredible amount of houses burning down every year. I think in the United States alone, like 20,000 homes or even more. It's a shocking number how many homes each year burn down due to electrical problems. And those electrical problems, 99% of them stems from overloaded fuse boxes. So have an electrician come out, have a look at your fuse box, and upgrade it to a new one. So if you live in an average family home, I can recommend a 200 amp fuse box in the US. If your home is like built in the 70s, 80s, then probably you will need that change. And you can have a look at your fuse box. If it's just this tiny, and you see maybe like 20 breakers on it, yes, please do change it. But this is really rough. Usually the cheapest estimates in the US are around $3,000 to have your fuse box changed. So this is not a cheap investment, but it will make a huge difference for your sound quality. So when my fuse box was changed from that 60 amp to a 220 amp box, then imagine that even the lights, so when I switched on the lights, it seemed as if the wattage of the light bulbs doubled. So it can make that much difference, and you will see it not just in your audio quality. You will see that your lights light up much brighter, your computer screen looks 10 times better, and on the long run your house doesn't burn down. So it's really a win-win situation. And in addition, you get much better sound. And while you are at it, that you have an electrician come out and change your fuse box, ask him to drop in a dedicated line for your stereo. and that will be the true icing on the cake. And I will show you advice on what sort of line shall be installed. So for myself, I have in my living room 4 dedicated lines for the stereo and 1 for the projector and the Blu-ray, which are mounted on the ceiling. So 5 lines in my living room alone, and I have also extra dedicated line in the bedroom and an additional dedicated line in my second room. So each system they have. Maybe I'm overdoing things, but I don't think so, because the rewards are audible. So let's come back to power cords. So for sockets, I just show you this Leviton. Here is the number for that. This is in the US. In Europe, I don't know, or rest of the world, what kind of sockets there are, what brands they are. I have not tested them. You have to seek out somewhere an electrician there who is an audiophile and happens to have such experience, and then ask their opinion how and what you should upgrade. But if there's no such thing, then go to your local hardware store, a big one. Like here we have Home Depot and City Mail, and in Europe you have like OB and others. Then just go down there, look at the selection of the plugs, and take them out and look at the connectors. If you see that the screws are made of brass, good quality metals, then choose those over those which have aluminum connectors and flimsy parts. If it looks like really heavily well built, it will be an upgrade compared to what you have in your room. A general advice for everyone, maybe you forgot what was the number of this Leviton. And not just in the US, but anywhere in the world, just look for hospital grade outlets. All of those are made to very high standards, are extremely durable, have very good, very high quality contact surfaces, very high quality base metals, and they will be an excellent upgrade, and they would be quite on a very high scale in sound quality when you compare hospital grade plugs to an average plug. And that's what a lot of audiophiles in the US use, hospital grade plugs. We look through these guys. Dedicated AC line. Here there's a trick. Avoid black wires. So when you look at the installation of the wires in the US, you have 3 colors. You have white for the neutral, you have green for the ground, and you have black for the hot. And avoid using black color because it's going to mess up the sound. How can you avoid that? You can avoid that only if you install a new dedicated audio line, and we have when you get in the US electrical wire, they are labeled with the gauge first, and then dash, and then the number of conductors. So the plain ones are like this, like 14-3. It means that it's gauge 14 and 3 conductors. Look for wires that have numbers like this. So if it's like gauge 14, then it can carry 15 amps. That's the plain vanilla basic one that you have in your walls for those for the average outlets everywhere in every home in the US. If you see this one, like 12-3, it means the same 3 conductor cable, but 12 gauge. So this can carry up to 20 amps. So that can handle this Leviton plug. And if you use that, and this, also make sure to upgrade your circuit breaker to a 20 amp breaker. And the electrician will be really happy to do that. And this is up to code. It's perfect. And there's a wire which is called not the dash 3 but the dash 4. So for example 12-4, and it means that it has an additional fourth wire. So it has the white, green, black and the red. And these types of wires are used in the US for 220 volts, actually 240 volts. So yes, in the US we also have 240 volts, which is similar to Europe's 220. But in a next episode, in a different episode, I will explain how come you have 120 in the wall. If you use this type of wire in the wall, the dash 4 type, then you can get 220, or I would say 240 in the US as well. But you can use this type of cabling for your regular 120 volts, and instead of the black, use the red wire to conduct the hot. Because per US code, both red and black are hot wires. So if you use either of them, you are up to code and it's safe. So what I have done for my system, I used 10-4. So it has the 4 conductors but gauge 10. So gauge 10 wire can handle 25 amps. So that's the current capacity, so it can handle much more than the 12 gauge. And it is up to code to use that kind of wire with a 20 amp outlet, provided that your breaker is also 20 amp. And then the benefit for that is that it will carry much more current, and it will have a much better impact on your system compared to these sorts of situations. Okay, I think maybe I talked too much about this. Interconnects. Is there a smart way to save money on interconnects? Yes. One thing is that you have noticed at the prices, the shorter cable you buy, the less it costs. And there's also a thing that the shorter the better. So you have less signal loss for a shorter cable. So if you have your components close together, and you can get by with let's say like a 40 centimeter piece of interconnect between your deck and your amp, then go for it. It will sound much better than a 2 meter long interconnect. And also on top of that, it's not just the total length consideration, but what is the multiple of the length. So avoid wires which are a meter long or 2 or 4 or half of it, like 50 centimeter, 25 centimeter. Avoid these lengths because these pick up the most EM and the most RFI. So these are your perfect antenna to pick up all the junk. Go for 75 centimeter length and the multiples of that, like 40 centimeter. It doesn't need to be exactly multiple. You can give or take a few percent. That's all right. But you cannot go to this range. So like instead of 75, okay, now I just multiply by 3 and I get 3 meters. No, that won't work. Just work with multiplicates like twice, 4, and so on and so on. So 75 centimeter, 1.5 meter, 3 meter, 6 meter, 12 meter. These are good. Try to go for these lengths if you can. And when you want to, if you have the chance that you can get the raw wire, so not a finished interconnect with the RC end, just the same raw wire. For example, maybe you have some Kimber cable or other high quality copper cable or maybe silver wire, then you can try it out in your components first and just try out like maybe like a 5 centimeter piece. What kind of difference will it make to the sound? And if you for example, if you have like a point-to-point connections in your components, for example, you have a tube amplifier, then change that wire inside first, which runs from your RCA jack to the input tube. So, and that's maybe like 10 centimeters or less, and try that out, because that wire change will make the biggest difference in sound, and it will be similar to the change as if you are adding the interconnect to the amp. And if you like the change that you hear, then get an interconnect cable made with the same conductor, and then you can play around with the connectors like RCA ends. Which one do you prefer? And if you have, for example, solid state amplifiers which use circuit boards, then your choices are much more limited, because you cannot really take off the traces from the circuit boards. Actually, you can lift the trace, but it will look really bad afterwards. But what you can do on a circuit board, you can add jumper wires. So basically, there's maybe here, imagine this pen is a trace, this is your ground trace, and just bypass it with a wire. So solder the wire at one end, that maybe this is like the last filter capacitor of your power supply, the last bank cap, and here this is where your transistor is taking up the juice, and just put a jumper heavy gauge interconnect through the two, solder here, and you will drastically improve the current handling of your system, because no matter how good circuit boards are, their weakness is their conductors, the traces. It's always going to be much inferior to dedicated real cables. I will talk about that later. Now we are really running out of time. But even if in that situation you can just jumper anything you want and make your PCB look like a Christmas tree. And the only consideration is just make sure that you do not introduce noise pickup areas. So if you have a phono stage, then this is not a good idea there, because in phono stages, low noise is really critical. And if you have a phono stage whose designer knows a lot about noise, for example, Jim Hagerman, he is a wizard of how to create low noise components. He specializes in phono stages, and then with his designs, if you just add random wires to it, you will just end up introducing antennas to pick up noise, and then there it won't help. But 98% of the manufacturers do not have a fraction of Jim's understanding about noise around the components. And under these, I mention, I don't mention any companies, but just you can buy $10,000 plus products which were designed without much knowledge about noise, how to keep it noise free. So anyway, so for phono stage, don't add additional traces, additional jumpers to traces. But for amps, yes, go at it. For preamps, consult your technician where you can add and just learn that which are the places there where you can do it without introducing a noise pickup. And I just as a warning, so when I have anything written in black, it means that those kind of modifications require an expert. Don't do it by yourself. Okay, speaker cable. Can you do it in a smart way? Actually, this is what I can recommend to many of us, is that there's a company and they make open buffer speakers, GR Research, that's their name. And they have also a YouTube channel, and then he's really fantastic because he explains how speakers work, how open buffers work. and this is not just a basic speech there, and he is telling you the real deal. Because when you, I have friends and they send me YouTube videos. Oh, you have to look at it. This guy, this speaker designer. Wow, he tells you everything, and I look at it. That doesn't say anything. This is just advertisement. There's nothing specific there. It's just BS, or not BS, just just PR and commercials and management. Wow, look good. People who don't understand, they just like get excited and they show the stuff. But when you look at the GR research videos, if they are golden, so he really takes you into the world of crossover design, how speakers work, fantastic. And he has he just introduced that he makes kits for Kimber speaker cables. You can you can order it from him, and he will send it to you, and then you can solder it, put it together for yourself. And why am I recommending him? Because he uses excellent wire and good quality ends, and it comes at a very good price. And you have to know that you cannot just buy Kimber wire, like bare Kimber wire, anywhere. Ray only allows authorized dealers to buy spools of Kimber wires, and so he is the only source I know where you can get Kimber wire for DIY use. So and I was just shocked when he said for how much does he sell his kits, and it's a steal. Go for it. By the way, I'm not in contact with him. I just saw in a couple of his videos, and I just this is what YouTube is about. This is what online audio community is about. We should support each other. And when you see people who are doing honest work, quality work, they are dependable, they are willing to teach, they are willing to share their secrets, they have their hearts and souls in it, then yes, we should stick together and help each other and promote each other, even though we do not benefit from it. So let's get back to by wiring your amplifier. That's also a nice way to improve your system. However, it's a very costly way, so I would not recommend going for by wiring in the beginning because it's a big investment. I would say probably the only way to make it worth if you get the Kimber kit, the Kimber speaker cable kit. Then that's a good value and excellent quality. By the way, this speaker cable kit that he's selling, I think it's one of the best in the audiophile market that you can get. So I really recommend it. And not now, but in one of the future videos, I will show you the secret, the trick, what to do with Kimber cables to get the most out of them. I'm not sure if he mentioned it in his videos, but maybe he did. If not, then this will be a nice surprise. Anyway, so this another trick here is try inverting the phase of your cable's polarity. So if you cannot by wire your speaker, then just try flipping the negative and the positive at the speaker, and both of your speaker, both channels, and listen for the sound. And one way and the other way will sound different. And that's a good learning lesson for you, because one of that setting will be in phase and the other one will be out of phase. And the writings on the amp or on the speaker, that plus or minus, it doesn't mean anything, because maybe you have a component that flips phase and then you will end up with an out of phase response. And also the music material, some recordings are in one phase and the others are in another phase. So it also depends what you listen to, that which setting will be better or not. I can tell you that one will sound harsher, it will sound more like ghost-like flimsy sound, and the other will have more punch and guts to it, and less harshness, so it will be more pleasing for the ears. So that's in phase and out of phase. And if you have speakers that can be by amped or by wired, you can also try flipping the phase only on the tweeter or only of the woofer, because many of the manufacturers they flip the phase of the tweeter or the woofer to get better measurements, but they sacrifice sound quality that way, and that way you can figure out and get better sound. So for example, the totem arrows, they have inverted tweeters, so if you invert the tweeter in them, you'll get a much better sound. Basically that's it. So this is my advice for you. I hope you liked it and learned from it. Safety first, your legal responsibility, so just use your brains, don't do anything stupid, ask a professional, and thank you for listening. Please like and subscribe.